Hey, big up 23. Ile mtami utaka. Na hii nyingine jo. Na hii nyingine jo. Hey, washaweka bounty, ju flow killer. Beat imeoga, kiobina. Nina mazai kwako tuza tobina. Na vile niko ndani mzeya I'm so ina. Si take shots na bareda. Critics hawawezi kunispot under radar. Na bring the house down, I'm a tremor. Na leta fire, I'm a flamer. Na rusha motomo. Na shikata wazai na mamokoro. So na Jesus na songa I still. Roga shetani na mbaki sogo, mosodo. Don't whine, wabambiki juu Mungu anameja na maina. Na feel ni kinda I mean refine and fine. Mokori ni jeso imebaki na saika. Sishiki kijo I mean refine and fine. Cause you get that, me na cry sweet tighter. Sishiki kijo na city shikijo I mean refine and fine. Cause you get that, me na cry sweet tighter. Iko nini sina tabu. Siko steam, manyaru. Mziki mekoma, iko fit kuitwa babu. Fishers of men kwa hizi streets mi ndio nyavu. Alright, hii ndio sababu. I got the juice madafu. Magic kwa mi majabu. Amefura utadhani taksin mashavu. Nina mwamba si ababu. Shaito simfil kalamu. Washed by his blood, damu. Kauna ni feel, usishushe yo hamu. Na don't whine, na wabambiki vile Mungu anameja na maina. Na feel ni kinda I mean refine and fine. Mokori ni jeso imebaki na saika. Sishiki kijo I mean refine and fine. Cause you get that, me na cry sweet tighter. Sishiki kijo na city shikijo I mean refine and fine. Cause you get that, me na cry sweet tighter. Gigging with the beat, street legit, I'm bringing the heat. Steady wind, the one on the field. Wicked, honey, my fist, see that sponsor, lip in my bill. I'm speaking the real, we kicking in Christ, you know the drill. Blah, woo. So I'm back in the dojo, and the Lord. Kwa hearing, ukipenda nite Frodo. Shetani anawashwa, anateta zima moto. Kuna life after death, sielewi hii yolo. Okay, hichoki art giveaway. Madem tuko chocho, put your back into it. So lazima post nude, ama utwak kujue. Na kile una post, put your fact into it. Hichoki art giveaway. Madem tuko chocho, put your back into it. So lazima, we utwak kujue. Na kile una post, work a fact into it. Sishiki kijo I mean refine and fine up. Cause you get that, me na cry sweet tighter. Sishiki kijo na city shikijo I mean refine and fine up. Cause you get that, me na cry sweet tighter. Sishiki kijo I mean refine and fine up. Cause you get that, me na cry sweet tighter. Sishiki kijo na city shikijo I mean refine and fine. But you get that, me na cry sweet tighter. 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 Me na cry sweet tighter.
From sunrise to sunset, all day and night.
Power Radio.
tulitongozana ikaingiana tukashindwa kuachana. Ona leo hii you're in love with me. Kabla kujuana tulitongozana iliingiana tuliomba sana. Ona leo hii you mine to be for the rest of my life, for the rest of my life. I feel so lucky, unami, for the rest of my life, for the rest of my life, for the rest of my life. I feel so happy, unami, for the rest of my life. Now, the newest couple in town. Do see how? And I really broke down when I saw you walk in your wedding gown. Whoa, whoa. Kabla kujuana, tulitongozana, ikaingiana, tukashindwa kuachana. Ona leo hii, hey, you're in love with me. Kabla kujuana, tulitongozana, iliingiana, tuliomba sana. Ona leo hii, hey, we are meant to be for the rest of my life, for the rest of my life. I feel so lucky, unami, for the rest of my life.
Wanipigia sishiki, wanitumia ujumbe sijibu. Sijui ni kwa nini, I wish ningekuwa na majibu. I don't want to disappoint you, so I would rather avoid you. But believe me, I feel you, na ni kweli ninajaribu. Lakini moyo wangu huenda du 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 du. Every time I think of me and you, I'm afraid that I am going to love you, then later I am going to lose you. Moyo wangu huenda du 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 du. Every time I think of me and you, I'm afraid that I am going to love you, but I'm gonna try cool. 100 miles an hour. I think of everything that could go sour. My heart really wants this to work out. And I'm terrified of getting a blackout. Lord, forgive me, I have been running away from my true feelings. And it's time to stop being afraid and face my true self. Lakini moyo wangu huenda du. Every time I think of me and you, I'm afraid that I am going to love you, then later I am going to lose you. Moyo wangu huenda du. Every time I think of me and you, I'm afraid that I am going to love you, but I'm gonna try and give a chance. Try for you. 'Cause I'm gonna try for you. I'm gonna give my love to you.
From sunrise to sunset, all day and night.
Power Radio. Alrighty, happy Friday. TGIF, thank God it is Friday. I'm super excited. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Power Morning Drive Show, the Friday edition. Yes, when you see this background, you definitely know that we are up for an amazing show lined up for you, because this is our special edition of the Friday edition of the Power Morning Drive Show. I'm your host, Wanyoike. Do let me know where you're tuning in from, where you're watching in from, where you're listening in from, and let's have an amazing time. We cruise all the way from now 8 till 10 in the AM, and so it should be something that you're definitely wanting to jump along and cruise with us till then. Just to give you a couple of things that we shall be discussing today on the show, I have an amazing journalist, globally acclaimed, if I do say so myself. Miss April Zoo is joining me today because 3rd of May, which is tomorrow, is always a day of the World Press Freedom Day is commemorated on the 3rd of May every year. And so we are going to be discussing a lot about is press freedom, just the way we are with the state of the world that it is right now in, is press freedom a reality or is it a myth? So definitely that's a conversation that you do not want to miss out here. So we shall be joined by April Zoo. If you do not know her, well, just sit back, tighten your seatbelts, grab some popcorn, and we are going to get into that very amazing, tantalizing conversation. But before we do that, let me get you to work, and I start off with the day's traffic update. I start off with, let me see, where are we? What are we looking at? We're looking at Thika Road. Thika Road is looking bumper to bumper this morning. Traffic builds up all the way from KCA University into town. So, you you know, if you want to reroute, please do so. You will do yourself some justice. We also have Jogoo Road looking quite busy this morning, especially as you go towards a town. Same situation also happening along Kiambu Road from DCI all the way into Muthaiga roundabout. There's a lot of traffic there inbound. And also just slightly outbound from town as well. Same situation also happening along Limuru Road from the area around the United Nations area, just the stretch from the village market down towards Karura, looking quite hectic this morning. So if you can help that jam, please do so. But I'm not so sure whether you're going to be helped in any way, because where you could help is also the other side, which is Peponi Road, looking crazy. The build-up starts just as you go from the Zezoro restaurant into town. Lower Kabeto Road is also looking quite busy this morning. From Zen Garden down towards Westlands, just a lot of madness happening on that road as well. Red Hill Link Road is also quite busy this morning. Why, I do not know. James Gishuru Road is looking busy, quite busy as well as you go towards Wanyoike Way, which also is quite busy. From the Kabete Polytechnic looking quite busy this morning. So if you can avoid that route, but I'm not so sure if you can, please do so as well. Ngong Road is also looking quite, actually not as busy. Yes, well, it's there's a little bit of a snarl up, especially as you go from the Junction Mall down towards the Prestige Plaza area. A snarl up, yes, but it's slowly but surely moving. So you should be out of the woods in no time. Agulins Kodhek Road is also looking not too shabby this morning, so you guys should be good. Langata Road, I can see that there's a lot of traffic, especially the build-up happening along Wilson, that area, Wilson Dam Estate, Western Hotel area. That's what's happening on that front as well. Mombasa Road is looking not too bad this morning. Just a little bit of a build-up as you go from Capital Center into Bellevue, but clears soon after that. Raila Odinga Road is also looking quite good this morning. Nothing much to complain about. So in case of any incidents, do let us know. The hashtag to use is hashtag Pawa Morning Drive. Yes, and I'm not going to get into a break. Let me just get right into it. We start off with the day's dailies. And what is making our headlines this morning? The Standard newspaper, on the cover page, the story that we have a picture of the now slain now slain or dead Kasipul MP Charles Were. And the title on the Standard newspaper is A Fed Up Nation. As messages of condolence poured in following the death of Kasipul MP Ongondo Were, a wave of public anger towards the political class began to surface. Many Kenyans responded with scorn to tributes from fellow politicians, and some even offered prayers of gratitude for Were's passing. Given the depth of public frustration, disillusionment, and resentment, it is time for the political class to engage in serious and honest self-reflection. This is a story that continues on page 6, and actually they came in with the receipts, okay? The cover page also have some comments from Kenyans here, just rounding up the sort of public discourse that has been going on among Kenyans. And so one of the comments that have been taken a screenshot here is, if we continue at this rate, 1 MP per month by 2027, Kenya will be corruption free. So that's Kenyans. My God, Kenyans are really fed up. And I mean, I cannot blame Kenyans because just the other day after the BBC documentary expose, after the June 2024 finance bill protests were happening, you had some of the sentiments from members of parliament, others telling Kenyans, you know what, this is not something that is only a preserve of a country like Kenya. We need to move on because democracies around the world also go through the same thing. Why are we opening up wounds of the same issue? And I'm like, yeah, this is exactly what Kenyans are talking about. Like, there's just a a wave of rage from Kenyans. And of course, it's coming from it is valid rage, because how can you live in a country where the leaders, instead of taking accountability for the actions that they did, that was absolutely insulting to the sovereignty of the people, that was absolutely unconstitutional, the one thing that you're trying to deflect us from is telling us that, oh, we need to move on. So I mean, it's always never cool to have to deal with the loss of a life, but I can understand where Kenyans are coming from. So that's a comment from a Kenyan saying that, yeah, if we can be eradicating one MP, now, violence is always, obviously, I'm not, like, on this show, we are not perpetrating violence of any kind, but I'm just telling you what Kenyans feel, that if we continue to, unalive and assassinate these members of parliament or politicians or everyone within the powers that be, apparently Kenya will be corruption-free. And I have to give a backlash on that comment. Well, I understand where the Kenyan might be coming from. Corruption is not a matter of the individuals that are eradicated. It's a systemic issue, right? So yeah, we might kill each and every one of them, but if we've not yet dealt with the systemic issues, the systemic and hierarchical issues that that the systems that we have, our governance systems, our political systems, social systems, justice systems, really, then we do not. It's not a solution to our biggest problems, because what I'm trying to say is that it's not an individual's problem; it's a systemic issue. So another ex-user saying, we also mourn the demise of the 5 people who were killed in Angata Barikoi. Yeah, this was just early this week when we saw there was some clashes amongst the police and the people, and 5 people were killed just out of people, just rogue police officers. Brutality, man. Police brutality needs to just come to an end. Opening fire on citizens just because of land disputes, and you've not even had the time to listen in. And of course, they do not do this on their own accord. They do march to orders from above. And so that's a Kenyan also trying to rope in the conversation, the bigger conversation here, which should be, oh, now you guys thought you are invincible and that death cannot be, it cannot come near you. Well, guess what? You guys have been killing us, and we are not in any way going to take it laying down, So another user, they actually really came with some receipts. Another user said, let's sympathize and move on. Gen Z used to abduct themselves. I think Honorable Odongo shot himself too. Yes, again, it's an odd. Kenyans are really, 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 I mean, and there's something that oppression does to you, man. I think you develop a third sense of some sort, and I think for Kenyans, satire, we can't help ourselves from being humorists. We can't help ourselves from being sort of self-proclaimed satirists, right? Because you cannot live in a country and separate yourself from the political discourse that is happening. So yes, this is definitely something that was said after the June 2024 protest, that Kenyan youth are abducting themselves. And so it was just another opportunity for a Kenyan to remind us what was said uselessly and carelessly, terming everything that we have been through as a nation on this fault as well. Then I have read several stories about this guy, and I can say he was a henchman. His death was planned for long. We don't need to mourn when the people of Kasopul and Homa Bay are celebrating. We sympathize and move on. That's just one Kenyan. And lastly, a child was shot 7 times in Rongai, and someone, we know the someone, asked, but he is alive, yeah? And it was so embarrassing. I remember watching that interview. I remember, Linus Kaikai, we gave you a new name from that. Linus. Yeah, but he's alive, yeah? He's alive. And I'm like, it's tone deaf. It's really tone deaf. It's cringe. It's embarrassing. Please, for heaven's sake, for God's sake, please, let's do better. Yeah, so this user was reminding us of that, but he is alive. Another one said people are abducting themselves. A day after BBC report, one MP said people die every day. They sympathize and move on. They are thinking they are exceptional to death. Yeah, and that's the exceptionalism of Kenyan politicians, or I think politicians really just across the world. Yeah, you guys are not exceptional, not in any way. And so, may his soul rest in peace, but it's we are observing we are retrogressing. Human rights in this country is retrogressing to some levels that I would like to say unprecedented, but we definitely know that they are not unprecedented. It's just the times that we are living in right now. But moving quite along, because apparently we were told to move on from death. Unmet expectations on Labor Day. Workers leave event with questions and empty pockets, but hold on to presidential directive of implementing 2024 minimum wage promise. That is a story that continues on the page 2 of the Standard newspaper. And lastly, on the page, on the sports page, Yamal heroics preserve Barca's Champs League final dream. It's a story that continues there on page 32 of what's happening in the English Premier League. All right, on the cover page of the Daily Nation, storm around Schlein MP, I think, again, a story about the Kasipul member of parliament that was shot dead at close range along Ngong Road. And the story here continues on page 2 and 3 of the Daily Nation. And just to give a quick title, it says, Kasipul MP Charles Ongondo Were left parliament shortly after 7 p.m. on Wednesday. Minutes later, his car pulled up at a red traffic light on Ngong Road where an assailant shot him and he was dead by 7:30 p.m. His death has sparked controversy amid claims linking him to bloody attacks in his constituency. But his family defended him, terming the accusation he had blood on his hands, part of a cover-up for his murder. All right. The story, also something that the Daily Nation has captured on its cover page is finance bill. Farm produce drugs hit with 16% VAT, a story that continues on page 6 and to 7 of the Daily Nation. Education, Nyakango fights back in school bursary row with county chiefs, and then shot 13 times in front of his family and lived to tell horror story. Charles Kamau had just arrived at his home in Ruiru when an armed gang struck. Determined to protect his family, he confronted the thugs. All hell broke loose. A story on the crime page of page 8 of the daily newspaper as well. And then also the story about Ruto's reliefs to pensioners, teachers, and other workers as well. All right. And last but not least, on the Business Daily, Treasury shuns tax increases to calm Gen Z. That's a story that is on the cover page of the Business Daily this morning. Environmental regulations are bound to change the economic and business environment in many significant ways. On the Finance Bill 2025, we also have a story about Paulina Lanco. It's the life column of the Business Daily this morning. Then we also have a story here about commercial banks clash with the CBK over loan pricing formula. BAT payout to farmers rises to 1.1 billion Kenya shillings, and chaos as vehicle number plate shortage persists. Then last but not least, inside employers' proposals that Kotu state tried to silence. So, yeah, if you want to get a hold of what's happening there, please grab your copy of the dailies today and get into understanding what exactly it's looking like on that front as well. Right now, it's time for us to get into our conversation today. Remember, I did mention that we are going to be having the one and only globally acclaimed. You know, she's a big deal. She's a big deal, guys. Amazing writer. I have actually interacted with a lot of her work for like now it's coming to 5 years or something like that. Yes, and I remember her vividly saying that the work of journalists is to help us remember. So we are going to be getting a little bit into that kind of conversation and looking at World Press Freedom Day, right? Which happens tomorrow. That's the 3rd of May. And we are going to be assessing how is the world doing as far as press freedom is concerned. So we're going to be talking a little bit about issues of censorship as well as expression, media ownership, the BBC documentary, of course, and all things in between. So ladies and gentlemen, see you after this short breather. I'll be back with April Zoo as we get into that conversation. Start tweeting at us, start commenting, start asking us questions. The hashtag to use is hashtag Power Morning Drive, and get us on all our social media handles across all platforms. That is Power Radio. Also on our website, www.power254.org. See you after this short break. Do not move a muscle.
I
From sunrise to sunset, all day and night. Power Radio.
Me, I keep it fresh, fresh on. Me, I keep it fresh, me, I keep it fresh, me, I keep it fresh all day, all day. Fresh all day, fresh all day, it's all cool. Fresh all day.
Think you can handle Count Moolah.
I come correct, and you're my swag so official like I'm the ref. See, I be rockin' Louis, so shorties wanna do me. Have all these haters feeling so underdressed. Huh. I see you mucking me, but I ain't mucking back. Cause I ain't got time for your chitty chat. Why you tryna copy and paste me? I'll be with your broad like butter on pastry. She's on my arm like my Virgin Mary. And we be on that weed from early. OG, smoking by the OZ. And all she wanna see is a couple emojis. Well, I got money to blow. And shorty, I ain't tripping, so you already know. Can't moolah all day. If you want it, gon' pay. Hater, I'm just letting you know that
All I know is swagger.
Me, I keep it fresh all day, it's all cool. Me, I keep it fresh all day, it's all cool.
Put your hands up if you have some.
Cause you keep it fresh all day, it's all cool. Cause you keep it fresh all day, it's all cool.
Okay, my life is not the same, and I know who to blame. If I remember the name, it sounded something like fame. For the money, for the game, I would kill it. No shame. Rep a crew that's untamed, and I'm a dude that's maintained. Swagger so right as Frank. 20 big Benjamin sitting in the bank. What you think? I've been working hard, numbers agree. So please believe me, this is easy, born to be an MC. So I took one Nairobi, the swagger strong only. 24 hours round the clock, Wani. The Levi store know me. Big up Ryo and Fuzzy. Now I'm fresh all day, Nikki Chapakazi. Boys be looking happy, this ever slappy. Lucy, Kibaki, LOL. Yeah, I'm only messing, I'm just digging the jam. Bumping it with my fam. Chuck Taylor's helping me stand. Let go.
All I know is swagger.
Me, I keep it fresh all day, it's all cool. Me, I keep it fresh all day, it's all cool.
Put your hands up if you have some.
Cause you keep it fresh all day, it's all cool. Cause you keep it fresh all day, it's all cool.
I said we on to be their favorite Moolah team pacing. Further than the basement, higher than the spaceships. NASA couldn't waste this, rockets couldn't chase this. Swagger on vintage, African Fresh Prince. Flying like the Jetsons, higher than the Jeffersons. Moving on up till they can't get enough of us. Now we at the top, better use your binoculars. Swagger non-stop is what you do if you have some. And I'm just getting started. Haven't seen a Kenyan boy trying to go harder. Huh? You gotta work for your profit, cause everybody's trying to get paid in Nairobi. I think your swagger need coaching. Fresh all day, it's all cool by the ocean. Swagging down in South Coast, you could say we coasting. High grade glowing, super flowing. Damn.
All I know is swagger.
Me, I keep it fresh all day, it's all cool. Me, I keep it fresh all day, it's all cool.
Put your hands up if you have some.
Cause you keep it fresh all day, it's all cool. Cause you keep it fresh all day, it's all cool. Fresh all day, 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 it's all cool. Fresh all day, fresh all day, it's all cool.
From sunrise to sunset, all day and night. Power Radio.
All right, yeah. I'm not your government, so when I promise something, I actually see to it that I deliver. So I promise that I will be back, and I'm back. We are back. I welcome back to the Power Morning Drive Show on Power Radio, where you tune in and power up. Yes. I'm your host, Wanyoike, and I am here with April Zoo. I'm so excited. We are going to be talking about press freedom. Is it a myth or is it a reality? Yeah, that is definitely the nail-biting conversation that we are going to be getting right into. But before that, please remember you can get in touch with us on our social media handles. We are at Pawa Radio across all socials. You can also find this live broadcast on our YouTube channel. And if you've not yet subscribed, please love yourself. Go to Pawa Radio's YouTube channel, subscribe, hit on that notification bell so that whenever we go live, and we do go live quite a bit, you will be the first to know. And also you can find us on our website, www.power254.org/Pawa Radio. Alrighty, let's get into it. Miss April Zoo, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Welcome to the Power Morning Drive. And for maybe cavewomen who do not know who you are, they've been living under a rock, kindly introduce yourself and the work that you do.
Yes.
Yeah.
As Anne mentioned earlier, my name is April. I'm a freelance journalist, also former editor at Guernica magazine, but I have been a freelance journalist in Kenya since 2017, however many years that is.
That's longer than I have done this. Yeah, yeah. So you're the OG. I gotta learn.
Many older. But yes, I've been here covering mostly issues of urban inequality in Nairobi. I think a lot of the ways that the city's urban design has shaped life, and especially violence in the city, land issues, and more recently, sort of focus on the Chinese diaspora in Kenya as well. So it's kind of
Chinese diaspora in Kenya. Yes. That is cool. One thing that you can tell us about the Chinese diaspora in Kenya?
About the Chinese diaspora, I feel like a lot of my thinking right now is about this phenomenon I've been noticing just as an observer, as a journalist myself, which is that so many people, when they look at this issue of like China in Kenya, whether it's Western editors or Chinese people or Kenyans, everyone is very, very certain about this. Oh, it's good. It's good for this reason. Oh, it's bad. It's definitely bad for this reason. Oh, it's 100% this, 100% that. And me, at this intersection, I feel like I'm the one who's most uncertain about this at all.
Okay.
What does this mean? What's happening? I often feel like there's so much certainty in journalism. Maybe we can get to this later. Yeah. And a lot of my work is around still keeping room for doubt in order to find more truths.
More truth, yeah. Okay, that's good. Yeah. We were just talking offline and off air, and I was telling you how I heard you one day saying, we were at a forum, and you said that the work of a journalist is to help society or people remember. So I kind of want to start off on that. Like, what did you mean, and what does it mean, and how have you seen it play out even in your career as a journalist?
Yeah, I think this idea of a journalist's work being to remember or to record, I think those are very much the same for the public. I think there are many times as a journalist when, and you probably know this as well, when you get discouraged or when you don't feel like anyone is reading your work or not enough people are reading the work or not enough attention is being paid to something that you feel is really important. What is the point of all of this? It might as well just be, I don't know, doing something else. But I think for me, the importance of this very core basic function of journalist is something that I think anyone who's in this kind of work, even if you're not a journalist by profession, but you're doing something that is building the archive. This thing, it's so simple, but it's so grounding, I think, because at the end of the day, if as a journalist you're writing about things that people aren't paying attention to, or which, there are many other examples, I think, of important work being done that isn't perhaps getting the impact that people want. It's always important to remember at the end of the day that also this work is for the archive. So that even if you wrote down something in 1984 that people just kind of brushed over or didn't even believe was true or didn't feel was important, that now is in the archive, is in public memory for someone later who might use this information for some function that you cannot even possibly imagine.
Right, yeah. Okay, oh, well, that's beautifully said. I'm going to clip that and always go back to like, yeah, this is exactly why I am doing this. Yeah, it's for the archive.
Because
all right,
we need that
because we need that. Oh, yeah, you need that. You need that all the time. Right, so World Press Freedom Day, it's happening tomorrow and it happens annually. And, before we even talk about press freedom, let's even start on a personal level. When you think about freedom, how has your own journey of finding freedom or freedoms, if I could say that, helped you in your journey, even as you tell stories, even as you show up as a journalist, if at all it has?
Yeah. I really like this question of starting with what freedom means in general, because I think otherwise, if we just launch into this like censorship and press conversation, I think this definition of freedom gets compressed to simply the absence of police coming into your office and storming it. Of course, that's one way that lack of freedom shows, but there are also positive forms of freedom. And so for me personally, aside from the question of press, I think freedom is self-determination, right? The ability to have time, your abilities, your whatever, your personhood, and to be able to do with that what you want, and hopefully, of course, also in a responsible way and in a way that's informed. But it's that, self-determination. I always go back to that word because freedom is not just like the absence or the vacancy of like unfreedoms, of like people who are of subjugation or people coming in or censorship, but it also should be, I think, or I challenge people to think of what it means in a positive sense. If you were to exercise freedom, what would that mean? I think that's much more broad and I think can also lead to, I think, more interesting political conclusions than just the absence of oppression.
All right. Oh, I love that. And so I think also what I'm hearing you say is that, the intersectionality of freedom, like freedom, when I think about it, it's very multidimensional. It's structural, it's gendered, it's systemic, it's all these things, right? So even as you pursue your work, how has it been navigating work within the media space and bearing that in mind, like the intersectionality or the intersectional, the intersectional aspects of freedom? And do you find that you are free as a journalist to tell stories, to feel, to go and immerse yourself in stories? How does that play out?
I think when you mention intersectionality, that often manifests in journalism in interesting ways. So, for example, as a journalist, when I go to interview someone, I'm not just a teleprompter or something. As a journalist, I am eyes attached to ears, attached to a body that someone sees. I might have access to someone that someone else might not. I might have access to speaking to a woman that a man might not. And you might have access to people that I might not because of the way that I look or my foreignness. And I think that this is one of the main ways in which intersectionality, I think, colors limits, but also presents opportunities for different people to tell the truth or to tell stories. And I don't think it's a simple thing of, okay, if you look this way, then you can do this. If you do this, then you're better at this or whatever. I think it's a more complicated thing of understanding, again, to this issue of doubt, that all of us as human beings come from somewhere, look a certain way, can practice our journalism in certain ways, and are not allowed to practice journalism in certain ways. What we do with that information, especially when we pass all of these, imperfection or biases or diversity, I think, which is really a strength, through this journalistic method that we all share. You can't just publish anything, right? We know that, and all of the rules that then govern what you can publish and how you can publish and what you have to do before you can publish something. That, in combination with this knowledge of how everyone is able to access people differently, or how everyone thinks differently, or where everyone comes from. I think this combination of diversity and rigor is the answer for, that's where the strength of journalism can lie. So to me, this is how, freedom and intersectionality and these differences that we all have come together. I think.
Is the press free?
Absolutely not. I think in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Like, especially right now, in like May 2025, I would say the state of press freedom is very bad. I don't know enough on history to say if it's the worst it's ever been, but certainly it's quite bleak. We can get about this in many different ways, but I think right now...
Let's get into it. Let's get into it. What are some of your biggest frustrations when it comes to, that you feel are barriers of press freedom?
Press freedom, I think today, where we sit right now, the biggest elephant in the room is that there's an ongoing conflict that has been the deadliest conflict for journalists in human history. And that's, of course, the genocide taking place in Gaza right now, for which I believe, with the exception of maybe a couple of IDF accompanied convoys, no foreign journalists have been allowed into Gaza. And I think that's been the case for some time. But to date, more than 217 journalists, almost all Palestinian, have been murdered. And that is more, I wrote this down before, that is more than the US Civil War, World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, all the Yugoslavian wars, and the post 9/11
combined
war in Afghanistan combined. This has been by far the deadliest war for journalists, and it's, I think, bizarre because it's this, genocide has been live streamed, right? It's not like you're getting to know these journalists because you've seen them, you've seen their reporting, but you've also seen their tweets, when they go home and they're just pouring their hearts out online. You get to know them, and then it's almost inevitable, you feel at this rate. You're just hoping that they don't get killed, and then you hear in the news. This has happened so many times. And I say this first off because it's happening, and if we're going to talk about press freedom, then the killing, and we're talking about, of course, like, this has been proven. We don't need to. You can go and look it up. The direct targeted strikes on journalists. Of course, paramedics and many other people who should be protected as well. This is happening, but it should be for the kind of mortality rates that I'm talking about. This should be something that we're all talking about first thing when we talk about press freedom, and the fact that there are a lot of fora for press freedom that aren't mentioning this huge elephant in the room. I feel is that, how can we not talk about this unless we have just agreed that Palestinian journalists and media workers, cameramen are simply an exception to the ideals that we hold up in journalism. I don't think that's true.
Or it could be as a result of being numb. Do you think we can, maybe perhaps that's also one of the things,
I think it's being numb.
Because of continuously being inundated by these images and videos and just imagery about what is happening.
I think this is also the case for Sudanese journalists who have been covering the war, for Congolese journalists who, God knows, even what they report is people are not paying attention to because, it's just conflicts in Africa, whatever.
So just another day.
And so what happens then to the journalists who are reporting on that? Oh, they get jailed. Oh, they're disappeared. People don't even pay attention to that. So I think first off, we need to talk about the safety of journalists in these places. You can't have journalism without journalists, and you can't have information if the people who are reporting on it are being, their lives are being threatened.
Right. Have you had to deal with maybe being barred from some territory or being like your freedom as a journalist being curtailed in that regard?
Personally, for me, no, I haven't had that experience. Only just, people yelling at me online about whatever I've written.
Whatever it is.
That's, freedom of speech. That's allowed, and that's perfectly fine and not press. But of course, I think all you have to do is like scratch a little deeper and you'll see. I think for me, the format of the work that I do, which is mostly long form, mostly narrative, I don't carry a camera, with me. I don't come with a crew of 4 people. I think it's very difficult, especially for video journalists and photojournalists also, where they're much more visibly journalists to do their work. But also, of course, for text journalists who are reporting in areas of conflict or politically sensitive areas. Certainly within the region, it's become much more difficult to report. I think like Ethiopia is a good example of a state that has really cracked down on journalists, local and foreign.
Yeah.
And I think, the sands are shifting in Kenya as well, as we'll speak to, I think, soon enough. Yeah. That it might have been much easier to report on certain political truths than it is now, perhaps.
Okay. You have, because of just like the work that you do, I'm sure you've interacted on a global level, with what's happening across the world in terms of the context of press freedom. How does Kenya compare to the other contexts that you've been working in?
I wish I had more stats off the top of my head, but I think for as much as there are valid critiques, and we'll make those soon, about the lack of press freedom in Kenya, retaliation on journalists, the media ownership structure of mainstream media in Kenya. These are all things worth critiquing.
Yep.
And yet at the same time, I don't know, it feels like also we're comparing in very bleak times when there's always the bar is very low.
Yeah. Oh,
the bar can go lower.
It can go lower for sure, yeah.
So I think, off the top of my head, for example, I think the People's Republic of China is one of the worst countries when it comes to press freedom. There is, as a result, though, a lot of interesting and really exciting citizen journalism that's taking place there. I think for people who are interested in looking at innovation from the ground up in terms of reporting on facts and truth, and simply getting back to the original function in the most basic form of journalism, which is getting information to people, information, a public good.
Yeah.
If so, then how do you do that? And so there are a lot of people in China, also independent newsrooms that are still working in the ways that they can to get news out. But I think this is one of the countries where, for a very long time, the idea of independent journalism in China has been dead for a long time. Not been dead, but in the way that it used to be, that age has certainly been over. But I think one of the interesting things that you see in any of these countries that have very repressive regimes is then, as a result of that, what kinds of forms of journalism, new forms of journalism, in terms of social media, citizen journalism, just spreading information. How do you get around censorship? There's also a lot of exciting things happening in those countries with the worst press freedom sort of statuses.
Yeah. Oh, it's kind of like a dichotomy there. We are always having to deal with the duality of these realities, man, and it's kind of it's tiring. Anyway, so 1991 comes the Windhoek Declaration about press freedom. Do you want to unpack for us a little bit about are there gains since the 1991 declaration, and if not, what ground do we need to cover in as far as achieving press freedom is concerned?
Yeah. So I didn't know about the Windhoek Declaration before you mentioned this before our show. Okay. It's the reason that we're here today, because the World Press Freedom Day on May 3rd was declared as that was signed. This was 1991.
Yeah.
And so the Windhoek Declaration, which was made in Windhoek, Namibia, was the coming together of a lot of African journalists and newspapers in the context of, it's 1991, the Cold War is coming to a close. The Cold War, of course, being this really important world-shaping sort of few decades that I think, especially when it came to media, when it came to objectivity and funding, which side is it was a very important thing, and Africa was kind of this this battleground, I think, for hearts and minds as much as it was for political power during the Cold War. So now we're coming to the end of the Cold War and saying, okay, now what's the future for press freedom, for African newspapers? So it was signed then, and that was over 30 years ago, and I think we're quite a ways away from the central ideal of the declaration, which is that that information is a public good. When you think of other public goods that are supposed to be, what does it mean to be publicly available? Things that should be and are not publicly available, such as water, or electricity, or good education, or healthcare. It should be a public good like that, and I think the underlying foundation of such a concept is that this is something that you should not have to access because you have enough money, or because you're of a certain class, or because you can travel to a certain kind of a place in order to access a certain kind of information. It should be for everyone. And there are many ways to interpret that, but I think that information will never be a public good so long as, let's just take the newspaper, for example. I think it's something or radio, is quite accessible to many people here in Kenya. But this information is, I think, to my standard, not going to be that kind of a universal public good until the information that is in this, accessible newspaper is true and is not, mediated by whoever owns this newspaper, or whichever businessman owns, a certain, industry and is giving envelopes to journalists or buying cars for journalists. So again, it doesn't, for me, even if the newspaper is free, even if the radio is free, even if anyone can go online and read these free articles, that's still not a public good until, the quality of this information, if this information is even true, and if it's not omitting other important information.
Right.
So,
And speaking of truth, we are trained as journalists to be fact-based, just report facts. And I'm like, facts are not necessarily the truth sometimes. Something can change. It's a fact today, but tomorrow it's going to change. And so I want to ask you the interplay between facts and truth. And also, as we talk about objectivity, right? As we talk about being objective and having objective, reporting within the media space, do you feel that this kind of connotes, or the implications of it are part of the challenges as to why we are grappling with issues of press freedom?
So there's a lot there, I think. So for facts, there's so much out there about, the public doesn't trust the press because the press isn't doing their job of delivering the truth or delivering facts. And that's a whole nother thing that we can unpack. But then this accusation, which I think is in many cases very valid, that journalists are not reporting the truth, or that they're reporting only facts. Maybe let's start with this facts, truth dichotomy. So there's this idea of of journalism that only reports facts. I think a lot of this is the newswire, AP or AFP, where all they do is
Stats.
This happened.
Done.
And AP, actually started in 1846 as as a newswire, but what they did at that time is they would publish these almost encyclopedia type blurts of facts. This happened, this happened, this happened. And similarly to now, so now the newswires, what will happen is maybe the Nation will purchase a story from AP, and so you see the story where it's just from the AP, but the byline is written, AP. And then they just write it back then. But back then, in 1846, what newspapers, which at that time were almost all partisan papers. So they were either you had a communist paper, or you had this paper, this capitalist, whatever this. Everyone had a point of view at that time. This idea of balanced, neutral, a recent construct, but we can get to that later. But at that time, what these papers would do is they would just buy the facts from the AP, and it was accepted. Everyone would then just take their own spin on it, according to whatever your paper is going to do. So there has always been, but then getting to what I mentioned earlier, when it came to the age of TV broadcast journalism in the 50s, in the 60s, particularly in the West, that is when you had a news anchor sitting every day talking to you, this is when you had now the introduction in the US, at least, of this idea of news should be unbiased. It should be neutral. It can be. It has to be balanced. But I think the reality has always been much more complicated. And I say this because, especially coming from the US, where our history of of racism is very clear. This shows very much in journalism, and it shows very much in questions of what is true and what is unbiased journalism.
Yeah.
So, for example, Ida B. Wells, she was a black journalist who was one of the, I think, pioneer journalists who were documenting lynchings of black men throughout the South, and this was a huge phenomenon where you were having thousands of black people, mostly men, being lynched publicly, and this was at the time a very
Jim Crow.
Jim Crow era.
Yeah,
you would have white families bringing their kids. You know, you would go and watch a lynching. It was a very socially accepted thing in certain circles.
Yeah.
And also, I think in this racist period of not the period of it's still racist.
We're still we're very racist.
In this period, it was something that you know, Ida B. Wells's journalism was considered biased. She was considered not neutral, taking a side.
Not objective.
Right, which now, of course, we look at that and like, this is wild. She was simply reporting a thing that happened, a murder, a mass murder of this, of black men. But the thing about what is considered biased and what is considered true and truthful reporting, she was reporting facts, right? But it was considered not the truth, and it was considered not the truth because of the because who was in power at the time.
Yes,
not people like her. So that's, I think, the key to when journalists are often pushing against, oftentimes their editors, but their editors are saying, oh, this is too biased. Oh, you're taking a side. I think we should be more balanced, you know. What about the lynchers? What are they saying? You know? I think that is always a bit more flexible than sometimes people imagine. You know, we're taught that there's one truth, that there's like one line, a border beyond like what you can report. Okay, murder is bad, but what is good, you know? And I think what a lot of journalists, since Ida B. Wells and before her, but now are pushing at is like, okay, no, but the journalistic method is having me go and report on this lynching. I'm following the method, I'm interviewing people, I'm reporting the facts. Why is this not considered the truth? So I think that border between truth and facts is something that is always in negotiation and perhaps should be as society catches up to like what is within the realm of like proper truth, you know, and pushing back at who gets to decide that, which is often the people who are in power, who have a direct, you know, incentive in being like, you know, you can't report on that.
Right.
Or like, you know, and I think Gaza has been a really good example of that as well, where you see journalistic institutions, especially legacy institutions that have reported on Ukraine in a certain way. Oh, you know, reporting on the deaths of this person, or using active voice to talk about, you know, the Russian military killing people or killing a Ukrainian journalist. But then when it comes to Gaza, we suddenly see these journalistic methodologies and rules suddenly shift. Now it's, you know, it was just these Palestinians keep getting hit by bullets. They're coming from, who knows where they're coming from, you know, all of these rules about language, about attribution suddenly seem to melt. And so I think it's always good to have this ongoing conversation as journalists of like, where are the facts, what are our methods that we have always used to get to the truth, and then how do we, you know, how do we keep each other accountable within the media to make sure that these facts are being arranged and the language is being arranged in a way that shows the public the truth.
Right. I love that. We are going to get into a quick break, and when we come back, we discuss the BBC expose. I'm sure you've watched it. There's a lot to be said on that. So let's take a quick breather. We are still here with April Zoo, journalist and editor. We are discussing press freedom. Is it a reality? Is it a myth? And what can we do to ensure the freedom of the press and anybody who is within the media collective, as well as that? So yes, please start sending in your questions for her. She will be able to answer some of them, if not all of them, and we will see you on the other side of the break. See you when we see you.
From sunrise to sunset, all day and night. Power Radio.
Just a little bit,
The money make me fly like a kite. kite. I wish that money make me fly like a kite. I wish that money make me fly like a kite.
Matinyawa, Bogna Matinyawa, Yaedo Atinyawa, Bogna Matinyawa,
Just a little bit, yeah.
Bogna Matinyawa, Yaedo Atinyawa, Nusna Matinyawa.
Fresh from the fire, fresh like the sea. Bora uhai, c'est la vie. All of these roads lead you to me. Make me spend all my money for peace and quiet mystery. Forbidden fruit is out of reach. I've got a hunch, a certainty. You make me spend all my money.
Matinyawa, Bogna Matinyawa, Yaedo Atinyawa, Bogna Matinyawa.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Bogna Matinyawa, Yaedo Atinyawa, Nusna Matinyawa.
A roll of the dice, a slap on the cheek. The thrill of the chase ends in defeat. If we are survivors, then we try harder. Most of my life I've been asleep. Who will I hold? Who will I keep? All of this talk is way too deep. I need to spend all my money.
Bogna Matinyawa, Yaedo Atinyawa, Bogna Matinyawa.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Bogna Matinyawa, Yaedo Atinyawa, Nusna Matinyawa.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Bogna Matinyawa, Yaedo Atinyawa, Bogna Matinyawa.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Bogna Matinyawa, Yaedo Atinyawa, Nusna Matinyawa.
Just a little bit, yeah. That money make me fly like a kite. I wish that money make me fly like a kite. I wish that money make me fly like a kite. I wish that money make me fly like a kite. That money make me fly like a kite. I wish that money make me fly like a kite. I wish that money make me fly like a kite. I wish that money make me fly like a kite.
From sunrise to sunset, all day and night. Power Radio.
Baby don't go. So baby don't cry.
Ladies, feel me.
Baby say my name.
Kunguru Misalini.
Can you feel the pain?
I know that you fed up. Sing along.
I will never let you down.
Nateni yengoga.
I will never make you cry.
Nateni nesoga.
I will never let you down.
Nateni nyodoga.
My girl, I will never make you cry.
Nateni setoga. Baby fikiria kila siku mina kupara. Najua wanipenda sana mbona unadai. I can see you fly, niko chini bado nitarai. Figa yako ndio mzuri sana. Adhiambo, wajua kupepesa hizo sianda. Dear Jesus, I never knew I met an angel. Baby girl, wange dongo nega heri. Donyi lepi nyisadendi, tomona weri.
I will never let you down.
Nateni yengoga.
I will never make you cry.
Nateni nesoga.
I will never let you down.
Nateni nyodoga.
My girl, I will never make you cry.
Nateni setoga. Baby girl, you lovely, deadly, sexy girl. Jabe, don't get touch me, kiss me, so ika. Najua wanipenda sana, mbona kweli wananyima hizo vitu we. Nyakini dongi ngena manyi gata heriga. Iyengo nagi kwalo na jaber. Njo nami, wange dongo tingo na gondeso na jaber.
I will never let you down.
Nateni yengoga.
I will never make you cry.
Nateni nesoga.
I will never let you down.
Nateni nyodoga.
My girl, I will never make you cry.
Nateni
So
setoga.
baby don't go. Never give up.
I know that you fed up.
Won't you say yeah?
Heriga, amaniga, adwariga.
Can you feel the pain?
I know, Miss Eleni, sing along.
Kama wanipenda basi nionyeshe.
Nashindwa ni kwa nini kila siku tupigana.
Kama unitaki basi niambie.
Nitafanya nini
dunia ni hame.
Najua wanitaka mbona wajifanya.
Mimi nakupenda anza leo mpaka mwisho.
Wachana mambo zao wanaona wivu.
Show me what your mama gave to ya.
I will never let you down.
Nateni yengoga.
I will never make you cry.
Nateni nesoga.
I will never let you down.
Nateni nyodoga.
My girl, I will never make you cry.
Nateni sechoga.
I will never let you down.
Nateni yengoga.
I will never make you cry.
Nateni nesoga.
I will never let you down.
Nateni nyodoga.
My girl, I will never make you cry.
Nateni sechoga.
Baby, don't go. So baby, don't cry. Baby, say my name. Can you feel the pain?
From sunrise to sunset, all day and night. Power Radio.
It's the beast from the east, Amani Patroni, nice and slowly.
Let me walk with you, talk to you, know how you feel. Songa karibu mpenzi wangu, you're so sexy. Songa karibu mpenzi wangu, you're so sexy. It is you I think about when I wake up in the morning. You I think about when I'm walking in the day. You I think about when I'm sleeping at night. You niwe mpenzi wangu. You niwe mwangaza wangu. Let me walk with you, talk to you, know how you feel. Songa karibu mpenzi wangu, you're so sexy. Songa karibu mpenzi wangu, you're so sexy.
Uwe wangu wa milele na milele. Mpenzi na kuwaza kishenzi. Oh, niwe kichwa changu, roho yangu niwe. Rafiki wangu wa milele.
Let me walk with you, talk to you, know how you feel. Songa karibu mpenzi wangu, you're so sexy.
Natabasamu kila siku juu yako.
Songa karibu mpenzi wangu, you're so sexy. Let me walk with you, talk to you, know how you feel. Songa karibu mpenzi wangu, you're so sexy.
Natabasamu kila siku juu yako.
Songa karibu mpenzi wangu, you're so sexy.
Twende nani wewe wafanya moyo wangu dunde kwa masekunde, ni kama nimefunga dude ama nimepatiwa recording deal ya bure. Ndio sababu nataka uwe wangu wa milele. Your smile, the way you walk, the way you talk, inafanya kila mtu aseme oh my god. Inafanya heaven and earth to come to a stop. Sema kweli my girl, you're too damn hot.
Let me walk with you, talk to you, know how you feel. Songa karibu mpenzi wangu, you're so sexy.
Natabasamu kila siku juu yako.
Songa karibu mpenzi wangu, you're so sexy. Let me walk with you, talk to you, know how you feel. Songa karibu mpenzi wangu, you're so sexy.
Natabasamu kila siku juu yako.
Songa karibu mpenzi wangu, you're so sexy.
From sunrise to sunset, all day and night. Power Radio.
Watasema lakini watachoka, watuonea kijicho lakini watakoma, wazee watachoma. wakizidi tukugonga watasema
From sunrise to sunset, all day and night. Power Radio.
Welcome back. That was Big Pin and Amani. They're playing right here on Power Radio. Is Wanyoike? What? Have I forgotten my name? I guess I have. Yes, and I'm still here with April Zoo, who, by the way, she just told me that she actually speaks Swahili, and I'm going to put her on the spot. I have to have a conversation with you in Swahili. This is so cool. They taught you Swahili, or did you learn when you came here?
Yeah, I learned before I came here.
Oh, you learned before.
I spent some time in
So
TZ.
how on a scale of 1 to 10, how good is your Swahili? Sasa history ya press freedom unaonaje?
No, I can't even like this. When it comes to abstract things, yes,
so
but I can get by. Yeah.
But you can get by. Okay, I want to hear just a little.
I can get by. Like nikienda Tanzania, if I go again, watu wanasema
sasa wewe bado hii ni Kiswahili kweli? No, Tanzanians just drag all of us. They just drag all of us. We are like
It's enough to get by here.
Yes,
let me say that.
Just you can get around. Yeah. But it should be a walk in the park, because like, do you speak Mandarin?
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard that it's one of the very most complicated languages on the planet.
It is. I always tell people, don't bother unless you have 7 years to commit to this.
7 years.
But it's also so different to Swahili, so it's like it's not. I don't know that it helps.
Okay.
But
yeah.
Swahili. I feel like it's and it's also, going back to the journalism thing, I think it also makes a big difference. Like, I've never worked with a fixer. I think a lot of journalists have this. It's very nice to be able to, just go somewhere and just be able to start talking, to say whatever I want to say.
Yeah.
I don't have to have a translator or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have become a journalist if I didn't already speak Swahili.
Yeah.
I think it just would have been much more difficult. I think that there are incredible journalists who do incredible work with translators. So it's not that, but I don't know. I just sometimes
Okay, it's fine. Or at least I've had just a little, just enough, right? Yes, and we are still here with April Zoo, and we are in the midst and the bones of discussing press freedom. Is it a myth? Is it a reality? And what has happened in the recent, in this past week, I think some days ago, there was a BBC documentary dubbed Blood Parliament, and it was just taking us behind the gruesome killings that happened back in the June 2024 anti-finance bill protest, and it was quite the 37-minute ride for me. Before we even get into what that BBC documentary was all about, what was your initial reaction when you watched it?
I watched it. It broke me again. I don't know if there's any other way to say it. I was there, of course, not reporting on it, but just there and
at the protest.
At the protest,
okay,
and including on June 25th, and. There's something about watching the videos of that day again that if you were there, I think just remind you either the background sounds, the strange silences, the sound of a crowd when it begins to panic, and how like the details of or just the smoke. I think there are a lot of things that when you watch it again as this documentary, it brings that back. But I think the thing mostly for me that broke me was for the first time seeing videos. That BBC had collected of Eric Shieni, of Eric Mutisia, of David Shege, before they had been killed, We saw their pictures, but it's another thing to hear their voice, to see them singing, to see them, hanging out with their families. And I think that is I'm glad that the documentary centered the humanity of these people and all these questions of like, I don't know, there was like no justification. Not that there's ever justification, even if they were doing something. But in this case, I think it really did, as what we spoke about before, I think point to the truth of like this was just violence for nothing.
Yeah.
Violence for just for the sake of punishment.
Yeah. And, you know, the government also barred it from being screened from, you know, national media. Yeah. And again, another form of censorship. So let's talk about censorship, Can the powers that, you know, that be, hasn't this ship sailed? Because you are here trying to control a BBC documentary, for example, not being able to be aired on a national television. But then again, we are in the digital age. People are no longer consuming. They are not like, it's not going to do anything. In fact, a bigger bulk of people are going to consume it digitally, right? Yeah, so
they've drawn attention to it.
Exactly, you're just going to throw
like
out.
so the potato girls, as well. It's like not a thing, and now
everybody now we want to actually watch. Yeah, so could you talk to us a little bit about censorship and just the drawbacks with it, you know, even as it pertains to press freedom. Yeah,
I mean, what you say is right. It's like a government that is so, you know, that is doing censorship like this, just like in the brute force type way, which oftentimes backfires on them.
Yes.
You can look at that and say, well, this is stupid. And, you know, probably in the case of this regime, like there is no like bigger game. It probably just is like... stupidity in terms of like political, I don't know, strategy. But it has its own logic as well, which is that it creates an environment of fear, which then lets or makes journalists or potential citizens to not speak out, to self-censor.
Yes.
Because, yes, you can say this is really stupid, right? Now everyone is watching this thing where no one knew about it before. Now you're just motivating people to, as they have, you know, I've been seeing these screenings, public screenings for free, just put out in different places. I've seen it now translated into Kiswahili, into Kikuyu, and maybe other languages. This is all great. But yeah, you might say, wasn't this, you know, hasn't this ship sailed? Why are you doing this? Anyone can look it up on YouTube. It's for free. But I think there's also an alternate logic, which is this very important one of creating a new normal where a journalist who wants to do something like this documentary is now going to second guess themselves because maybe, for example, they've seen how the government has gone after the BBC, which is this huge legacy institution with the UK government behind its back, with so many resources. It's become a diplomatic issue. And they say, well, I'm just an independent journalist who's Kenyan. I don't have any of this protection of BBC, and I've seen what they've gone through. Maybe I don't want to take this risk. You know, so so in that case, this kind of hard-handed censorship has worked then, right? Because now you're self-censoring. And I think the self-censoring thing is actually a much more dangerous phenomenon in the long term in terms of press freedom. That makes it so important then for journalists to speak up about this kind of thing, even when it's kind of a stupid act from the government. Because what we're fighting against is not like this, you know, this policy by policy, like, oh, this crackdown per crackdown thing. What we're fighting is this idea that we're normalizing this kind of censorship. Even people say, oh, this is not new. See, like this happened back, you know, in Ziamoy, or like, oh, even under Kenyatta, like this is not new. Or look at China, they have it even worse. Look at Myanmar. True. These are all true. But if we normalize this, then we end up in a situation where a young journalist who is not alive today grows up in an environment where they're like, well, there are just certain things that should not be published, or there are just certain things, or they grow up in a world where there's no normal, where, you know, these kinds of things should be decried, should be criticized, should be, you know, for these freedoms to be protected very vocally. So that's why I think even when it feels useless for us to just be like, you know, still banging on this drum, that we cannot normalize this kind of intimidation that leads to self-censorship.
Right. Is self-censorship something that we can completely maybe annihilate, because I guess it's very internal, you know, and even going back to our conversation earlier where we're talking about having internal conflicts even as journalists, like where do we even begin?
So self-censorship can be, in the example I gave, something that happens within the individual, where you have a piece of information and you as an individual decide to not publish it or make it public. But self-censorship can also happen at a collective level. For example, within one newsroom or one publication. It might be the decision of a couple editors, but that's still self-censorship when you say, okay, we have a story. I think this happens a lot in mainstream Kenyan newsrooms where you have a story that a reporter brings, but then the editors or perhaps other journalists around them say, well, we have an agreement with this particular, business magnate. This is not a story we can touch. Or, they're even ready to run the story, and then at the 11th hour, someone makes a call, some envelopes are moved around, or something happens where the story is killed. That's self-censorship as well. Well, I guess in this case it's not. It's self-censorship if you don't write the report, which happens a lot, but then it's censorship if there's intimidation happening. All this is the same thing, just to say that. And I think also within Kenya, mainstream media culture, it's kind of this agreed upon reality. This is just how things are. And it's unfortunate and they could be better. But at the end of the day, and this is not to wave my finger at journalists who, I think especially Kenyan journalists who might be on like a 10K per month salary. That's a bigger problem that we can talk about. How this, the political economic structure of a media company paying journalists 10K a month. You, of course, they're going to have to find other ways to make money, which leads to the lower quality of the journalism if they have to, have side gigs. But also then making them much more vulnerable to corruption, to bribes and things like this, or to sponsored pieces that will, allow them to do other work. All these things are part of that too. But to get back to your question, self-censorship is something that can happen at different scales. It can happen at a larger scale as well, where you're sitting in a room talking to people and all of you decide that, this is simply not worth it. And like I said before, this is not me morally waving my finger and saying I'm better than other people who have had to make these difficult decisions. I think a lot of these, even in a difficult reporting environment like in Kenya, I think often what happens is local reporters who have information because they've done incredible work, because they have incredible access to people, they cannot publish it under their own name or in the publication they're part of. But instead of self-censoring, they then pass on this reporting to an international reporter, or like in the case of BBC, there were a lot of, I think in the credits there was a note that there were many reporters who contributed to this
that could not be, their names, they were protected.
Exactly. And so they'll pass on information so that it makes it out there. And that is one way I think of resisting this pull of self-censorship. It's like, okay, well, this information is not necessarily tied to my name, even though it's my work, my labor, it needs to get out because information is a public good, perhaps. So then you get it out through some other means.
Right. Resistance is something that, we're constantly having to think about, constantly grappling with. So as we navigate, whether it's through storytelling, whatever it is that happens within media spaces, what are some of the ways in which we can tap into ourselves to kind of use our work as forms of resistance? Because I think we cannot have a conversation about press freedom without having a conversation about resistance. So where do you see the space for both coexisting?
I think there are two ways to look at resistance. One is as a journalist resisting the pull of these forces that we all experience. So going back to Ida B. Wells, for example, her being a journalist, doing this reporting, publishing the reporting as a journalist, just doing the work of a journalist in journalism, even as the entire journalistic world in the US was saying what you're doing is not journalism, what you're doing is biased, whatever, taking sides. she just simply by doing her job and doing it well and doing it consistently was resisting this, whole an ecosystem of press unfreedom in the U.S. at that time. And so I think for a Kenyan journalist, for example, yes, there's constantly this pull to, take that bribe or to, censor this story or to not publish this or to, any number of things that face there are so many challenges that face journalists that keep them from this active truth telling, and God knows so many have paid the ultimate price as well. Resistance then looks like, to go back to Ida B. Wells, doing journalism in the ethical way, in the holding to the standards that we all hold collectively as media workers and not budging. But then the second way I think that you could look at resistance as a journalist, especially even if you're not the kind of journalist who's writing op-eds, who has their opinion, out there, and that's a whole another question is like, should journalists have their opinions out there?
Should they?
I think it's a complicated question I'll get to as soon as I finish this point, which is that then the stories that you choose to write and publish, that's an editorial decision, right? That's also part of your craft. What do you choose to write? There are an infinite number of stories that you can write. And if, for example, an MP was assassinated 2 days ago, and for the next week in the newspapers, all you see are stories about sheep farming, then that's also a political decision, I think, as editorial, as journalists, that's definitely a decision that has been made as a choice.
Yes.
And so you can also make a different choice to focus on that, or the different angles. So it's not saying you put out on the front page an editorial saying this is bad and this is why we think it's bad, for whatever. It's you're choosing what to omit and what to and what kind of hierarchy of importance these stories are, and within that are so many ways to resist power or hold power to account.
So should journalists have an opinion?
So there's journalists have opinions. Whether or not you
humans have opinions, period.
We come from places. Journalists practice different religions. We are.
That's an opinion shaper.
Gender. Exactly. We have different races, ethnicities, and this affects, like I mentioned before, also what kind of access we have to different kinds of people, what stories we can even tell. So the point is not to say that journalists shouldn't have opinions, because that ship has sailed. We're people. The question is whether these opinions should get in the way of journalistic rigor. So there's a message, right? You can't just publish anything. If you speak to someone, you have to fact check it. There are ways, and different publications at different standards, but you have a process for verification without which you cannot run this quote, or without which you can't just say something that a politician has said, and if that's true, without then writing why it's not true right after. Those are rules, and they're there in place, and those rules are in place. Attribution, right of response, all these things are in place so that the individual, the diverse opinions and backgrounds of the journalist do not affect the truth. And it's also a collective thing, right? You have a team, a newsroom, where there's supposed to be checks. So if you have an editor who maybe is, has a very slanted view, you have a fact-checking team that you can't, if they say this, according to our rules, cannot be run, it cannot be run. So it's a healthy newsroom, in my view, is one that is diverse, of course, where it's made up of people, who are living people, of course, but also where the peopleness of the people is not allowed to overcome the rigor that the journalistic method is supposed to maintain. It's always been, news has always been people making news.
Or at least we hope.
At least we hope,
At least we hope, because that's also a completely different conversation.
But that's also the thing, is can AI go and talk to someone who's in a refugee camp and know what they said? No, at the end of the day, news still has to be people, and the fact that it's not going to be people for as much as it is now, this has already been happening. Newsrooms funding being cut, journalists not being able to survive, everything relying more and more on freelancers. You can pay less and less. You know, this has already been happening even before AI. For reasons that have nothing to do with the quality of journalism, but simply to do with business of journalism.
Right.
Cost cutting, things like that. It's not new. But I think it makes it even more important than when we talk about, you know, what is objective and what is not. It doesn't have to do with, you know, I go back to this essay by the journalist Wesley Lowry, I think, in the Columbia Journalism Review, if I'm not wrong. I can't remember where exactly it was published. But he makes this dichotomy very well. He's a black journalist working in the U.S. And so he talks about this history, of course, of black journalists in the U.S. Being very aware for much longer than many other journalists of how skewed you know, the journalistic institution in the U.S. has been, because for a long time, in reporting on, you know, yes, slavery, but also Jim Crow, but also, you know, the flight, the migration of black people into cities, and then the crime that, you know, painting black people as criminal. All of these things are not new to black journalists, and so they understood that the way that news is produced, it's not about white journalists at that time being personally biased, even though they were, and that's why these opinions were put out or came through in objective reporting. It was the fact that these white journalists were not following the rules, the journalistic method that they themselves held themselves up to. So he's not saying objectivity is out. You know, everyone just says their opinions. He's saying, if you journalists seem to care so much about objectivity, why are you, for example, covering black crime and you know, this epidemic of black crime in the city in this way? You know, and not highlighting the other issues. Or why are you, you know, why are you, when you write about
Black Lives Matter, for example,
or police shooting dead a black man, why are you calling it an officer-involved shooting, and not saying that this bullet came out of the gun that was pulled? You know,
oh my God,
you know, why are you doing all this? So it's never a question when we get into these conversations of like objectivity and should journalists have opinions. Everyone's biased, but if you're following this journalistic method, and if you're in a diverse ecosystem of journalists of different backgrounds, that's a strength, right? Who are holding to these rules, who are following these rules, you know, a fact-checking team, you know, you have an editor or multiple editors, some of whom are, you know, personally familiar with this. The more diverse your team and the more faithful you are to these journalistic rules that we all like agreed are good, then that is what keeps you close to the truth. Not saying, oh, these humans actually for some reason just don't have opinions. Like, that's never going to be true.
That's just not the truth. We need a press freedom movement revolution, some sort of revolution happening. So will that kind of revolution be televised or digitized?
It has to be. In this age, if one is to happen, I think it's going to be like this. Press freedom revolution. I think the most, like for me, I think there are versions of that happening all the time already. Like I mentioned earlier, in China, for example, the free press, or at least the best that something that looks like the free press can do, is citizen journalists. It's just a guy with a phone. That, you know, that was how some of the most honest reporting on what was actually happening at the outset of the epidemic, for example, in Wuhan. It was just people barging into emergency rooms and taking videos of all the bodies, you know. That's not going to look the same, for example, then for people who are trying to report in Eritrea or in Russia, or even, you know, parts of the US where there's a lot of also innovation happening. There are sort of this surge of people who are calling themselves movement journalists, who are, instead of, you know, if you have a group of people who are working to advocate for their freedom in some way, instead of just covering them from the outside at demonstrations, you know, covering them from within, but also still with journalistic rigor, but some would call this, in the Ida B. Wells way, they would call this biased. Oh,
you really are a fan of Ida B. Wells.
Yeah, I'm going back to the OGs, because
she's come up so many times. I love it. Yeah,
because I love how this is journalist that we recognize as one of the most important journalists in our country's history, who was not considered one, even at the time. It wasn't even people were saying that she was bad at her job. They were just like, no, you're just not a journalist. And this way that citizen journalists, some young woman with her phone who's going around asking people what they think about this and publishing them for this. I think there's this idea that this is not real journalism. Real journalism is whatever. And I think these, if there's going to be a revolution, it's kind of in a way already happening, which is people starting to question, how come this for example, this genocide that is the deadliest conflict for journalists in history is not being covered by journalists as such. People who are pushing journalistic institutions to follow their own rules. Is this not a revolution? I think this is the revolution is not going to be something that is, at least in media, it's not going to be something that happens like that. It's going to be people kind of waking up and being like, hey, this is not freedom, how we define it. It's definitely not this. Or the institutions that are here are so compromised that they're not serving us. That's why the public has stopped trusting us. How do we earn it back? Well, here are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ways that we might be able to do that. And there's so many exciting things happening at a more grassroots level for getting back to the original spirit and the original mission and the original function of journalism.
Right. And one of the ways in which I think I'd like to look at it as different stories also is a way of maybe the pursuit of freedom in one way or the other. And you have a podcast that is also doing the work of, I guess, just freeing us with the stories of many untold stories and people that were pertinent to the history of Kenya, that we'd probably never hear about them, especially at least not in the mainstream media platform. So could you talk to us a little bit about the podcast, what it is called, and what it is all about, and how can people access it?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm the producer of a podcast called Until Everyone is Free.
Until Everyone is Free.
I have 3 teammates as well, Wari Mugadimba, Felix Omondi, and Stoneface Bomba. I started this with Stoneface back in 2020. And it's interesting because this podcast was actually a product of my realization of the limits of my journalism. This was May or June 2020.
When the world just shut down. When the world was ending, you were like, you know what? I guess not. Let's explore what we could be doing with an ending world.
So I was actually, Stoneface was a source of mine for a piece that I was writing about police brutality, because he was a part of the Social Justice Center. At the time, he was just this 20-year-old who decided to spend his days, going to the mortuary, identifying bodies of people that police have shot, speaking to mothers who had just lost their sons to police killings, gathering evidence. And so I was speaking to him, but I was also quite awed by his by how he decided to spend his days as this young person. And he was speaking to me, me interviewing him as a journalist. He was incredibly adept at connecting the everyday realities of what someone like him who lives in Mathare sees to the structural forces that have caused that. So he doesn't call Mathare a slum; he calls it an exploited community, because it's not just like this because of nature. It's, someone is doing this. Someone
planned.
There are people who have. Whatever. And so he was able to talk about power in such a beautiful way that we were just walking one day and we were like, I was like, you should write a book or we should do something together. We were like, maybe you should do a radio show. And it just so happened that day he was carrying this book from Ukombozi Library. It was a biography of Pio Gama Pinto. I'd heard that name. I had friends who told me, here's this guy who's incredible, but is not, barely makes a mark in, like curricula, you know, school curricula, and even anywhere else.
I never got to hear about PO even in my history classes. None of that. None.
And here's this man, and maybe some people know, Pio Gama Pinto Road Science Center.
Yes, the road. Definitely the road,
His house is under where the mall is now, so that's why they named it that.
Okay.
But so Stoneface and I basically were like, okay, well, maybe we should do a radio story, which eventually became this 5-episode podcast about Pio Gama Pinto, so that to get once again to the concept of the archive, so that like his story is archived, is saved, is whatever. But this, in thinking about this idea of an archive, which I think is important for journalists to think about as well. We were like, do we just want to put this like a museum behind glass, you know, and like preserve it, like put it in a book, but then it just sits in a library? No, we want it to be a living archive. We want this record of what Pio Gama Pinto did, the kind of leader that he was, and the kind of leadership that is possible in Kenya, the values that he stood for, the language that he used to talk about this. We want this to be a living archive within the minds of the kinds of people that he was serving when he was alive. The working class, you know, the masses that he spoke about. And so for that, we were like,
podcast.
It has to be in Sheng.
And so it's in Sheng.
It is in Sheng. The whole podcast.
Do
is
you
in
speak Sheng?
In the first season, I do.
So did you do like a crash course?
So the way that we did it, so that we could also have like an English transcript and subtitles as well for those who don't understand Sheng, was I wrote the script in English. It's very heavily researched, and the script is written in English. And then we had many talented translators. It was Felix Omondi, and also we've had Go Sheng do translation. Translation in Sheng is very, very, very difficult.
I mean, I do not speak Sheng. And I'm from the I do not. I'm from the streets.
Art.
And
So we have this team of translation artists who are helping us with this, and then we have the transcript in Sheng as well, and then Stoneface, the host, then speaks it. And actually, quite a lot of our whole second season and a couple of special episodes since then were actually recorded right here. Literally in the Pawa
right
studio.
here.
So thank you, Pawa. But so to get back to the idea of this podcast, it was just, we looked at this man, Pio Gama Pinto. For me at that time, as I was mentioning, as a journalist, I was writing these stories I was writing that piece about Stoneface for the New York Review of Books, which has a very particular audience, very much in the West. Bookish types, people who are going to read about this and maybe benefit by understanding more about Kenya and what the police, how many people the police had killed in the name of COVID, whatever. But I was like, what about these people? Like Stoneface, who I'm interviewing, is not going to affect him in any way, or the communities that he's serving. Is there more that I can do with my skills as a journalist? And this podcast is not me as a journalist. Like this is very much like me expressing opinions, having a political agenda. We're very explicit about that. And so that there was this whole process of me now as a journalist questioning, the limits, or not the limits, but rather my work as a journalist can do this. But then there's also another kind of work, that the skills that I have in order to, synthesize research into a narrative, writing a script that helps someone, that keeps someone engaged, but also tells these important forgotten histories of resistance in Kenya. These are things that I can do, especially in partnership with someone like Stoneface. And in Sheng as well, and later on Felix also became a sort of a co-host. These are stories that are or truths in a way, because it is, we're talking about history here, that can be told in a much more powerful way in a different medium, not my medium of this long form essay in my fancy English, that maybe has one function, but for Felix and Stoneface to be able to kubanja kwa Sheng, to be able to use the first person plural, us from Madai, us Masofra, us who are So I like to be able to say that in this way, from this perspective, in this language, is so much more powerful than me, for some reason, in English, talking about in my essays, you know, the power of the community. Like, no, the audience is different, right? The project of this truth-telling, storytelling is different. And so I think it's important for all of those, whether you're a media worker, a journalist, you know, a photojournalist, or just a photographer, whatever you are, to think critically about, to not just say, oh, I'm not a journalist because I don't publish in this newspaper. Like, no, there are many truths out there that are important to be told. Just like you were saying, like with your, you know, sometimes by necessity, like you want to be doing a certain kind of storytelling, and then, you know, here we are, we have to,
I'm forced
to talk about, you know, politics. It's You're forced. But I think this is the process. Like every good journalist, every journalist worth their salt, any storyteller worth their salt is constantly thinking about, thinking critically about, is what I'm doing reaching the people that it should? Are my stories making the impact that I want them to? Can it do more? Who should I be doing it with? How should I be doing it? In what language? In what form? These are all questions that are good to always be asking and always to be in doubt about, I think.
Because it's the 2020, we are in 2025, and AI is this big buzzword. How is AI going to shift how we, I guess, interact with media? And even, do you think it has some implications on media freedom?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest implication for media freedom is simply the decrease in quality of journalism. Right? First of all, just like I mentioned before, AI cannot go and ask someone on the ground what happened. There's always going to be a limit. There's always going to be a reliance on like basic reporting. But more importantly, I think the thing I'm scared about when it comes to AI is not that it will write like me. I think that's very soon that will happen. It will be able to write like me. It can write like a lot of essayists. And so that's there. The problem is not that AI will take my job because it can write as good as me. The problem is that those that have been in charge on the business side of journalism, who have been responsible for the decline of journalism, who have been responsible for more and more journalistic work becoming precarious, given to freelancers who are paid the same as they were in 1985, you know, who were, you know,
despite the inflation.
Right, exactly, and who can't make a living as journalists anymore. These people are not concerned about the quality of journalism. Yani, the reason that I'm afraid of AI is not because it will do as good of a job as me. It's because people will see it, the people who have already been responsible for the decline of journalism because of cost-cutting reasons and profit-based reasons, are going to be delighted by this new tool, because the quality of journalism was never a question for them in the first place. So to me, it's just the latest tool of this long story of, you know, whether you see it as a tax on press freedom, you know, or whether you see it as just profit. I think at the end of the day, a lot of it is just capitalism, right? Like the press ownership structure in the U.S., the fact, the consolidation of so many, especially local channels under big conglomerates like Sinclair, you know, where you see anchors line by line, word by word, saying the same thing. This is like, you know, all tied to profit motive. And so when people get so caught up about how good ChatGPT or AI replacements for journalists can be, I just say, like, it's not, the people who are making these decisions are concerned about how like good journalism is anyways. And so that's what I worry about the most. I think, of course, there are tools that journalists can, you know, and they're like transcription tools and things like that. I think maybe that's a separate issue. I know a lot of journalists find it useful to use AI-based tools in their process. I think to me that's a bit different. But the idea that AI will... Number one, I reject the idea that AI is inevitable. Like, I simply just refuse to lie down. I think that there's so much that journalists and storytellers can do, even if just to stigmatize it, you know, like this, they cannot sell or use this product so long as it's you know, not cool
Yeah.
or just like considered immoral.
Yeah.
But I think more importantly, more people need to understand that the question of AI in journalism is really the question of capital in journalism. It's the question of, you know, like for example, in this media ecosystem in Kenya right now, if a Kenyan journalist is being paid like 10K or being paid, you know, 2K per article or something like that, like what that means is that we don't, that's how we value journalism already, as something that is so cheap that you can pay any journalist 10K and it's fine.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But how we value, I mean, it's also how, I guess, how we value like doctors and nurses and teachers in this country is also like very low.
Yes.
So then the question is, the AI thing that's going to come, it doesn't have anything to do with like journalists or even readers and the quality of journalism they want. This is a conversation between the people selling AI tools and the business heads of the people who run the journalism industry who don't obviously have the quality of journalism in their heart. That's just another plug-in they're going to do to continue the same trend of paying journalists as little as possible, of making it harder to be a good-hearted journalist who just wants to tell the truth and hold power to account. Now you're going to do so with probably even less money, and you're going to see the journalism out there. Of course, it's going to be worse. That's a given. We already know that. But the issue is who cares and who gets to, you know, change that or resist that. I think that's why it's all connected, right? You can't skip this part of like empowering journalists and giving them and paying them enough and valuing them enough and making sure they have independence and can say no and choose to work for somewhere else. You can't separate that from AI, in my opinion.
Yeah. Wow. Unfortunately, we are out of time. But this has been so worthwhile. I've learned so much. I have to go back and just rewatch and take up some of the ideas, you know, and help me really in my journey, even as I find my voice as a journalist. But as we conclude, where do we go from here then?
Where do we go from here? I think to go back to this question of doubt, of questions, like every journalist I know worth their salt is always doubting themselves. We talked about this offline. When you ask, like sometimes it's just a struggle, you know, like why am I doing this? What's the point? Is anyone listening? Is anyone watching? And I think those questions to me are actually a mark of a good, you know, storyteller, because you're constantly asking yourself, am I reaching the right people? Am I telling the right story? How close is my story to the truth? If the answers are not satisfying, then what do I do to change the medium? You know, journalists are the ones who are constantly at the cutting edge of figuring out how to get a message to people. You know, if you are complacent, you know, in your a position as a journalist, thinking that the medium that was given to you, this newsroom structure that you inherited, that this is just the way it's meant to be and it's fine, then I think you're on the wrong track. But if you're asking questions and in doubt and trying to rework things and constantly innovate, then I think that's how the revolution is going to go.
Yeah. The revolution will be televised and digitized and all the eyesed. April Zoo, thank you so much. This was so cool. And thank you for the amazing work that you're doing. Thank you for rendering your voice, you know, to us and to always remind us whatever it is. Thank you for reminding us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, awesome. Guys, that was it. I told you it was gonna be fire. I told you. Yeah, she's a world-class journalist. Yeah, please don't play. When you see me out in the streets, please just greet me with respect, because yeah, that's just kind of where we are going from now. I thank you so much for taking the time to tune in to the Power Morning Drive Show this morning. We have been speaking to one and only April Zoo, journalist, and we've been talking a lot about press freedom. Is it a myth? Is it a reality? If you've missed on that conversation, not worry. Just go on Power Radio's YouTube channel. The live stream is going to be there. Again, she talked about archiving and why it's important, and so we have a lot of archiving on our Power Radio YouTube channel. Alrighty. Let me tell you, before I let you go, let me tell you what is on the lineup. You know now Fridays is an omnibus of programs. So from 11 a.m., catch Caroline Murote on the Shiva Sessions show. And then at 1:30 p.m. all the way till 3:30, join us for our commentary and witty and fun, you know, whatever it is that it always is. Power Rap, the gang is back. I will be hosting this time around alongside DJ CJ and Elijah Mose. So do join us from 1:30 to 3:30 for the Power Up. And today we Kenyans, some of their reactions and responses as to what it meant, narratives that serve the people of Kenya. That sounds like a good plan. I know it definitely does. So see you at 1:30. And then on Monday, I will be joined by Oscar Kambona, activist, and we are going to be discussing the state versus we, the people. Why is it that we are always constantly friction? You know, we are always on a friction, the people and the state. And so we will be discussing a lot about that. So you definitely do want to catch me also on Monday from 8 a.m. till 10 a.m. But for now, it's a goodbye, and I will see you at 1:30 on Power Up, where it all happens. Toodles, toodaloo, toodaloo.
From sunrise to sunset, all day and night. Power Radio.
Anahisi baridi. Unaonaje? Kasherehe kidogo hivi kapolite. Cheki. Kuna kitu iko sangi kwa Kikuyu.
Okone kwao toreda kwa kiamwaki. Okone kwao, can we make this a party? Okone kwao toreda kwa kiamwaki. Okone kwao, can we make this a party? Leo hakuna pombe za majuzi, si tunataka ya zama za kale. Totira hutia johi ya dhukoishi, idwe toreda area ya maidwe maitu. Tunatinore shama kama wainya tene, uruga bona kewa, it's always available. Tunatinore shama kama wainya tene, uruga bona kewa, it's always available. Kayo toiwe, kayo toiwe, kayo toiwe, kayo toy, we, kayo toiwe, kayo toiwe, kayo toiwe, kayo toy, we. Todie togere kafuri weroine, natoga deje todie kare choma. Tokwa bago itagada kame kanini, toho eroda koriaria makomete. Tutachagua kambuzi malishoni, tuje tuchinje tuile kama choma. Mwanzo tumwage kadamu mchangani, iwafikie waliotangulia. Tunatinore shama kama wainya tende, uruga bona kewa, it's always available. Tunatinore shama kama wainya tende, uruga bona kewa, it's always available. Kayo toiwe, kayo toiwe, kayo toiwe, kayo toy, we, kayo toiwe, kayo toiwe, kayo toiwe, kayo toy, we, kayo toiwe, kayo toiwe, benarata, kayo toiwe, nere shama, kayo toy, ay, we, kayo toiwe, kayo toiwe, benarata, kayo toiwe, nere shama, kayo toy, ay, we.
From sunrise